Did you know that parents rank teaching financial literacy as the toughest life skill? That's where Greenlight comes in, the debit card and money app made for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and track spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn how to earn, save, and spend responsibly, while parents have peace of mind knowing smart money habits are being built with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Wondery. That's greenlight.com/Wondery.
What say you, Richard Alex Murdaugh? Are you guilty or not guilty of the felonies wherein you stand indicted?
Not guilty.
How shall you be tried?
By God and my country.
The exact time when Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were murdered.
At the end of the investigation, it was obvious.
I'm not here to work with them, okay?
And the whole point is to have this not fall into the wrong hands. This case is unique, it's unprecedented in South Carolina history.
Anxious about money issues?
Your Honor, I object. There's a matter that needs to be put on the record.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room. Please not discuss the case.
I would move for a mistrial. I would move that it's not a mistrial because I don't think, even if you give this jury an instruction, you can't unring the bell.
Welcome to Unsolved South Carolina, the Murdaugh's murder, money and mystery. We are into we just finished the third week of the Murdaugh double murder trial. I'm here with our exclusive legal analyst, Charlie Condon. I'm here with our executive producer, Drew Tripp. And manning the controls back there is Max Harrison.
Hey.
And he'll also be fielding some questions. If anybody has any questions for us this evening, we'll certainly try and get to it. But first, we have to get to what happened in this courtroom today. We say it every day that there's something that twists in a different way, and it's always amazing. But Dick Harpootlian standing up and saying, "I object," in a really loud voice, and then talking about a mistrial. Tell me, why would he call for a mistrial, Charlie?
Well, let me set the stage a bit, if I may, as well, because I was seated maybe 10 feet away from Mr. Harpootlian, and you could see that Assistant Attorney General Metters wanted to get in this testimony that was a new area, really, and it was... Wow, what the stage was set, right? I mean, the housekeeper knows everything. So she set the stage of she was invited into a room with Maggie Murdaugh, and you were all thinking, wow, what are they going to talk about? Is it going to be... and then so
Right.
he sort of launched into what the subject matter was, which would be basically... And you could... I did sense a little tension at the defense table, like, this is something new now. What's
What
going on?
are they going to say?
Yeah, what's going on here? So then he
Okay.
got that next question in. Something to the effect of, did you talk about money matters or something like that? And so then there was this, how else to describe it? I've been sitting in that courtroom now, I guess it's 15 days. This by far was the loudest, from somewhat quiet to really, really loud in like a nanosecond. And Dick and I'm not going to yell it, but it was a yelling, I object, sort of angry, and popped up. Everyone, of course, you'd react to that sound. I was very near to him, so the sound caused you to react. And it was one of those moments that this is a historic trial, but I think that's going to be a historic moment as well, the emotion that just rang through. And then he quickly moved for a mistrial. And you could tell the prosecutor Metters was regretful, I would say would be a fair statement, that he went to that second question without laying the groundwork with the judge. And so the movement for the mistrial wasn't quite as loud, but it was very forceful. And what was going on in that moment, that's a very important moment from a criminal defense attorney's standpoint. Let me speak to that, because he, on behalf of his client, he is asking this judge to stop this trial, throw everything out, and let's start again. And the reason you would do that, the reason you would do that is that you think the information that has been before the jury, you can't unring the bell, is so damaging to his client, and that it's not admissible and so prejudicial. And of course, you do think of course, from a tactical standpoint, that there would be an advantage to let's leave Walterboro for now and come back another day, would be the thinking. And you could tell that Judge Newman, I wouldn't say mad, but was a bit put upon, shall we say, that he was put in this position because that issue could have been addressed without that second question coming out so quickly. So Prosecutor Metters, being the experienced attorney that he is, quickly apologized. But the court then said, well, I'm looking for the issue. I'm not looking for apologies because we've got to deal with this.
Yeah, we've got a problem right now.
Yes, and so there was a recess.
Yeah.
And jury sent out, and we had the 10, well, I don't know, what do you think, 10, 15 minutes?
It was at least 10 or 15 minutes, long enough that people were starting to get a little concerned.
Yeah, and you think that you think that maybe this will end. There's a possibility. I thought he would not do that, but I also thought that he needed to be very careful as to what was said. And I thought he handled it brilliantly when he came back out, is that the defense had been telling this jury through different questioning that this was one big happy family. And from an evidentiary standpoint, he stated that they, in effect, opened the door on this, that since they brought it up, he's allowed to bring in unhappiness in the family, money troubles with the family. And this was another moment in this trial. Then he said, so I overrule, no mistrial, the objection. And another surprise in this case, I heard clapping.
That's right. In the public gallery, behind where Charlie was sitting and we were both sitting, we hear that it is standing room only, folks, in that courtroom. I don't know if you can see it from the court TV feeds, but it is packed. It is a packed courtroom at this point. There is a line out the front of the courthouse for people to take any seat that comes available. It is absolutely, it's something that people have just gotten more and more invested in. And obviously they were listening just like we were, and we were busy taking notes, and they started clapping.
They did.
So, I thought Newman was going to say something about the clapping. I didn't know that. I've never heard clapping in a courthouse.
I agree, and that was not appropriate. But I think at the moment he thought that, well, we have enough going on here for me to try and admonish people and maybe hold them in contempt. Let's just move on. And I think that was an appropriate decision.
I have one small anecdote to add to that.
Okay.
From a perspective of somebody who is not in the courtroom and is only able to watch this the way that the way that most of you at home are watching it. And we're a little bit ahead of what you see just because of the feed. We're close by. We're getting a raw feed. But if you've been watching this trial on YouTube or any news station site streaming along Court TV, you'll note that sometimes someone will start talking and the first couple of words that they say is muffled. You can't hear what they're saying and it takes the crew in the courtroom to switch mics and get on to who's talking at that particular moment.
Because they're cutting off mics because of attorney-client privileges, maybe with discussions and things. I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's always a little brief.
I wondered about
pause where you don't hear the first couple of words that some people might say. You didn't need any microphones today to hear what Dick Parpolian said. It was loud and clear. You could hear it through the state's mic up at the up in front of the jury pool right there. It was loud and clear coming through on that video feed. So just a small anecdote on how loud it was.
And just to add one more layer on top of that, Charlie and I immediately beelined it from Charlie where he was sitting. I was sitting on the other side of the gallery, and I came over there and I'm looking at him with big eyes going, what's going to happen when we went into recess? And Dick walks by me and goes, I bet he's going to withdraw that question.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he said?
Actually, it was very clever. As I said, I think I've stated last night, friends with Dick, and I thought it was a really funny comment to me. No, he walked by with a big smile on his face saying, I'm going to withdraw the question.
Oh, yeah.
After all this happening. Because he was joking.
Right.
But it was a good attorney joke in the middle of a tense moment.
Very serious, tense moment, exactly. It definitely did the trick. Now, to get back to the testimony of what was going on, Blanca, have you heard much about Blanca before, Drew?
Oh, actually, correct. Let me correct one thing. Withdraw. He meant withdraw the whole matter. I shouldn't say the question. Yeah. In other words, it was sort of No, did he do that at the second back and forth with Johnny Metters? Was that the second one?
Oh, maybe it was.
It was. That's what it was. We won't get into that. That's another.
Oh, no. No, you're right. I'm sorry.
That's on the other.
Forgive me.
That's right. That was on the other because he was dead serious about the mistrial.
That was in
I think they were
cross-examination.
hoping for. Yeah, it was on the second, and not to bore everyone with. There was a
you for the
big back and
clarification,
forth. There was
yeah.
a big back and forth with John Medders and Dick Harpootlian on some other evidentiary questions that was again heated.
Right.
And the judge then went back in the chambers
That's
again
right.
and ruled in
Okay,
favor
so
of the
that was
state.
the
So
second
sorry,
time.
but there was so much going on. There was a lot going on.
Yeah, I thought to that one that you're talking about, that one too was also interesting, where they tried to bring in hearsay. But what was going on when we're having this objection? The whole idea of the happy family that has no real strife.
Yes.
Blanca was more than just a housekeeper. And just pausing for just a second, what an incredible story she has as just a human being. Goes in the military right out of high school. She's what hasn't she done in her life, right? Like
Criminal intelligence for SCDC?
Right. Yeah,
Did you do that?
Yeah, she's worked in the prison
incredible.
system. She's worked as a real estate agent. She's been in the military, and then she just got bored one day and went to work at Piggly Wiggly, or was it Food Lion?
It was Piggly Wiggly. Of course, right?
Because the kids were out of the house and she was bored, so she goes stocking
she needed
shelves.
to get out of the house.
Yeah.
I think that was the intimation as a mom with kids running around all the time. I definitely got the feeling she was ready to get out of the house.
But that aside, what a wonderful story that from a personal perspective, what a wonderful story. They're asking they're asking Blanca about her relationship with Maggie and how close they had become over the years, and it was more than just a employee-employer relationship. They were friends. And I think she even noted that Maggie had a nickname for her. Was it like Blanky or something?
Yeah,
or
and B, and they called her B, and the kids called her Miss B.
And
obviously, terms of endearment all the way around.
she was very
Everybody
impressive.
obviously just adored her. I think at one point they even said that that Paul loved her cooking so much that he asked if she could make dinner for him.
That was one of the things. The night of the murders, they asked Blanca to cook. Paul loved her cooking. Paul was coming home, and Paul loved her cooking. We keep jumping around, but she'd become friends with Maggie. They were close. Maggie calls her into a room one day and expresses some serious concerns, just as friends talking, that this boat crash lawsuit is going to end their way of life.
Yeah.
She says, and I'm not 100% sure that I've heard this before, but according to Blanca, Maggie told her they were being sued for about $30 million.
Right, $31 million, I think.
And Maggie apparently told Blanca, we don't have that kind of money. But she's at the same time saying, I just want this to all go away, and I want this to be, I want us to get back to a normal life, and if I could go back and fix this, I would in a heartbeat. And it's really obviously weighing on Maggie, the impact of this boating crash.
And she was crying, I think. Blanca said she was crying. And not only that, she was saying that she was willing to give them everything that she had.
Right.
Yes.
Maggie was like, I'll give them everything we have in order to take care of this.
For peace.
I think for peace, for feeling so guilty about what had happened to this poor girl. You really felt that through the way Blanca was speaking. And
she said, we'll start over. We'll start over if we have to. And that is... That puts things in a much different perspective if you're interpreting it through the state's lens of Murdaugh is accustomed to a lifestyle. He's very much reliant upon his name and his family's name value. Through the state's lens, so. It's alluding to more strife there than we've been led to believe that might have actually been the case. Or might have been led to believe. Yeah. Right. And the other thing being, she said that she wasn't sure that Alec was being truthful with her about the boat crash lawsuit.
Yeah, she didn't think that she understood everything that was going on with it. I don't even know. Well, we don't know where that sort of takes it, or if the state knows more about what was happening there, do we?
Here's a thought. Just a speculation and thought experiment. We're talking about Alec being accustomed to a lifestyle and being accustomed to the luxuries that his name value and his reputation and his law firm's power brings him. Let's think about whose name the properties were in. The properties were in Maggie's names. Moselle was in Maggie's name. The beach house was in Maggie's name. And they're trying to rack their brains of how can we afford this? Can we sell some stuff? And what if Maggie's like, no, that's my beach house. And that doesn't really jibe with what we just heard from Blanca.
Did she do anything to,
But maybe there's pressure there from Alec to sell some of that property and she doesn't want to do it. Or maybe she was willing to sell all that property and Alex wasn't. That it introduces the possibility of some real speculation. Just this one entry into evidence, this snippet of a conversation, it opens a world of possibility. And because you start having those conversations in your head, right, about the conversations you'd have with your own wife and husband if you were in that scenario. And
when you've been married for 28 years or, going on 30 years or whatever they were, that was up there, you have those conversations all the time. You have these roller coaster rides. There's no way that they were always just flush. And anyone that's been married for a long time knows that those conversations come up. The fact that she needed to close the door while Alec was sleeping upstairs to go have this conversation with Blanca, why did she need that confidence right then? Yeah. To me, that signals that there was no one else that she could trust to talk about this. And she could be thinking this could affect Blanca's life too.
True.
Because obviously she gains her income through that. So, well, there's a lot there. But Blanca had more to say, and I want to play this clip about it. We got a little snippet because it was a short little snippet, but we can expound on this if you don't mind.
He turned around and I said, Alec, hold on a minute. I said, your collar's sticking up. So he turned around and I fixed his collar.
Well, so that was a very small snippet, but basically what it was Blanca was explaining how she had seen Alec the day of the murders, which was Monday, June 7th. He's going to work. No one else is in the house. She's at Moselle getting some things sorted out before Maggie arrives, and helping with the dinner and helping, do all that kind of stuff. And he's walking out the door, and she just immediately sees that his collar's sticking up on the back of his shirt, so she's able to actually fix his collar for him on this seafoam polo shirt that he's wearing. And because she's obviously incredibly paying attention to details, and that's the kind of detail that you might remember too. I think that is also the point. She realizes when they show her later on in this investigation, the prosecutors show her this Snapchat video where he's wearing a seafoam green shirt, again, with Paul. This Snapchat video shows a shirt that is not the same as the one that he left the house in.
Right. So
now we're looking at 3 sets of clothes, not 2 sets of clothes. 3 sets of clothes. So we have not heard, and this is, I think, incredibly important, we have not heard from the defense about these clothes. And I do think they are going to have information about why he was in and out of these clothes.
That seat in cross-examination thought effectively on how the clothing could be missing because he didn't go back to Moselle after.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
And they were arguing, he took clothing with him. Now, that clothing, I thought, seemed so distinctive, the seafoam clothing that the state was referencing. I would think they'd want to produce that sooner than later if it's still around. It's the kind of clothing, or piece of clothing, I don't think a outdoorsman would dispose of, even if you lose weight. But anyhow, that's another piece of circumstantial evidence that I think the state hopes is going to be there. And of course, how about the business about how defendant Murdaugh, wanted her to say something about the clothing.
Well, that's what
Go
I was
through that
gonna
again.
say.
That was very powerful.
And that's where things got sticky, right? Because defendant Murdaugh is shown this Snapchat video as well by the investigator. So he sees this Snapchat video and comes to her and says, "I need to talk to you about my shirt, about what I was wearing." And when he when he talks to Blanca, he says, I was wearing this shirt. I was wearing this shirt when I left for the office, basically. And she didn't really want to contradict him, I don't think. In her testimony, she just said, well, she knew in her head, well, no, you weren't.
Right.
Because I touched that shirt. I knew what it felt like. You were wearing one of those Vinnie Vines.
Right.
No,
shirt,
I think that's
not
what
a Columbia.
she was.
The Columbia shirt was a Snapchat.
No, it was that Alex said to her, Blanca, you remember I was wearing a Vinnie Vine shirt, right? And it wasn't. It was more of a. It was just more of a regular polo shirt that he had on when he walked out the door. That he was wearing under his sport coat. And she recalled that it wasn't the same type of shirt.
And the state wants the seafoam shirt just missing because it presumably had blood on it, right?
This gets way off the rails, and it's two that are seafoam shirts that are the same color that are missing.
Yeah.
Anyway, what's more important there. The big takeaway out of that is now we have two instances of caregivers working for the Murdaugh family who saw Alec within the time frame of the murders, the day of the murders, and he's gone to them after the fact and, according to them, made suggested things and made offers to them, even though they don't seem to be outright offers in the sense that they're, hey, you say this and I'll give you some money. It's a little more veiled than that. It's a little more discreet than that, but he's clearly trying to control the narrative somewhat, according to what they're saying.
Yeah, I'd be curious, what is your take on all these wardrobe changes? Because she paints the picture, gets up late on that Monday and puts on a certain outfit. She's very descriptive about it with the change in the collar.
Right.
Goes to work, I presume. And then we see him with different clothing. That was like at about, what time was that? Was that
would have been after, 7
it was after 7 o'clock.
So you think he would go inside Moselle and change and put that other outfit on, right? Mm-hmm. And then that one's basically missing, right? With the exception, perhaps, there's some confusion with khaki pants. Could be. Yeah. So that seems very suspicious, right? The number of clothing changes that are going on in one day.
Yeah. Well, I don't. If you're going to go what we've heard is that Paul is going out or going around the property with his dad, with Alec, and they're going to, I guess, work or look at some things. They're going to be not doing things that you would want to do in your nice polo and your nice slacks in.
I get that first change. He would have been, it was like
that means 7, he would have gone.
It was almost close to 8 o'clock at night when he was taking that video, right, with the tree?
Yeah. So that means
where
he would have gone.
Where do those clothes go? I don't know. I feel like very strong circumstantial evidence.
And like you said, why isn't the defense bringing those clothes into evidence? Maybe they will, right? Maybe that'll be what they say is, is this what you're looking for? Is this what you're looking for?
Right, yeah.
If they don't, then we do kind of need an answer on where all these clothes went.
Right, but they did plant, I thought it was effective. They planted some seeds on how that clothing could be not available at this point in time. So I thought that was good.
Well, and also that he had lost an enormous amount of weight, right? I mean, he went from a 2XL... and he obviously, you just look at him, I mean, he looks like a completely different person from before these murders occurred, from the grief and stress and that sort of thing.
What do you make about the ring being in her car?
Wow. I ended my story tonight with that. And another cliffhanger, right? Mm-hmm. We find out that, maybe it's not, maybe it was just an interesting thing that they said, but it raised an enormous amount of questions. Why was Maggie's wedding band found underneath a driver's seat
in her Mercedes,
of her Mercedes when it was in the sheriff's impound lot? Why?
Well, why? Tell me about the Gucci receipt. Tell me about any number of things that we've heard alluded to today that we don't seem to have a lot of resolution on, and we're anxiously awaiting resolution. And one, if we're ready to move ahead.
Sorry, Max.
Yeah, we were getting questions, some clarification about the housing situation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So like Edisto property, Moselle property.
Let's just kind of lay out what each one is. So they have, basically we heard about how they were on Holly Street, which was their Hampton home for years and years. And when they sold that, the Murdaughs moved to Moselle, and Moselle was their primary residence. Moselle is in the Islandton community, which is not far from Hampton at all. So it's still in the same vicinity, right? And it's in Hampton, on that Hampton-Colleton County bordered 1,700 acres Moselle property. But they also had a house down at Edisto, and depending on where you're listening to this, that's a barrier island off of the South Carolina coast, one of our absolutely gorgeous beaches. And anyone who lives down here knows that as June approaches, the weather can get very warm very quickly. And I remember it being very warm, and we all just crave that offshore breeze that comes in from the barrier islands. So I don't think anyone that lives in the Low Country would ever argue with anyone that had a house on Edisto Beach.
Correct.
We would just think it was incredibly lucky. So that's where Maggie liked to go in the spring and summer. It's totally logical that she would not want to be down in Moselle where there are a bunch of yellow flies and, you know.
And one more question.
Okay.
Finding of the ring, would that not say that SLED kind of botched this investigation a little bit?
That they didn't find that ring underneath the...
Good point.
Wow.
That's a good point. No, it's hard to argue against that.
Very perceptive, whoever asked that question. So Max was saying that why didn't SLED find that? Well, we've heard from the defense over and over again in cross-exam already, you know, why didn't... Well, Blanca cleaned the shower, and they brought that up. She cleaned the shower, picked up the clothes that were laying in the bathroom, puddle of water, damp towels, all of this, still hours after the murders. So absolutely, I think we could all agree that SLED has some questions to answer on this still, right?
I would think they themselves
They've
would
been publicly
have done things
embarrassed,
differently.
I think.
Yeah.
Sorry, Charlie.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd go that far. Would you? Publicly embarrassed? I think there's some missteps, but, you know, it's a lot. By the way, and that's actually, I mean, think about it. You've got how many pieces of property? You've got where was their car that night, by the way?
Just at the house.
Right, sitting right there?
Yeah.
And then you towed it.
Mm-hmm.
No,
that was one of two.
I can't defend it. That should have been searched. That should have been found.
That was two vehicles that I read were impounded that night. It was
right there.
Alex's SUV and Maggie's SUV, or was it? Yeah, I think it was an SUV.
Well, and I wanted to say too, I'm hearing from folks online right now. They were asking about our streaming. Tonight we're going to be on our podcast, on our audio podcast, and we'll be bringing back that streaming. That live streaming next week. So if you're by the time you hear this, right, you'll know that you're listening to a podcast. But that's what's going on tonight. But let's get to Nolan or Nathan Tootin. Nolan is the brother.
So the way I was setting that up, Ann, it was that one of the many things that we've heard and that just have not been resolved in any seeming way. One would be the wedding band, just kind of thrown out there and brought into testimony and not followed up on yet. And another one would be today that we heard Paul's lifelong friend, Nathan Tootin, just casually mention that he was cashing a whole bunch of checks for Alex Murdaugh while working at Murdaugh's law firm. He was a runner. He was a courier for the PMPED law firm, and he was tasked with all sorts of things, delivering documents, running errands, doing the legal legwork that helps make these offices run. But some of the legwork he was doing for Murdaugh was driving over to the bank and cashing checks in Murdaugh's name and then bringing him back the cash. And sometimes he would hand Murdaugh envelopes full of money with some very peculiar names in the room: Corey Fleming, Chris Wilson, and the chief of police from the town of Yemassee, Greg Alexander. Okay. And so what do we know about Corey Fleming? Well, we know that he's a co-defendant with Murdaugh in dozens of financial fraud crimes and money laundering and things like that. We know that Chris Wilson has been intimately tied to Murdaugh. They were best friends and a victim of Murdaugh's by all accounts. And Greg Alexander, we've heard his name if you make the rumor mill rounds a few times throughout all this. Is that right? Mm-hmm. But there was
a friend as well as someone who knew Alex Murdaugh for sure.
The boat crash wasn't in Yemassee, was it? The boat crash wasn't in Yemassee within the jurisdiction. Okay, no, was it near Yemassee or no?
No, it's more. It's Paris Island, so it's way farther down.
You want to play the clip? That'd be awesome.
We would look through different cases. She would have me get cases from probate court and go through and highlight cleared checks. And if I found a discrepancy, bring it to her.
Did you understand the scope and what you were looking for? Did she kind of involve you in that?
Somewhat.
Did you figure out kind of shortly thereafter what you were looking for? Or what?
Okay. So that goes to part 2 of what you're just talking about. What was Nathan Tootin doing with Jeannie Seckinger?
Well, according to Nathan, Jeannie was his direct supervisor at the law firm. And after the murders, he was asked to start doing things to help Jeannie with her internal investigation with respect to missing funds and misappropriation of funds. And that involved him running over to the probate court and getting copies of records for clients of the law firm and running through those records looking for clear checks and bringing back to the law firm for Jeannie to look at these records that she was requesting. And he said within a couple weeks, and knowing what he was looking at and kind of just putting 2 and 2 together, he figured out what was going on. He figured out pretty well what he was looking for and why he was looking for those things that he was looking for. And that, going back to the testimony about who was in Alex's office when he was cashing those checks, he was very much not a witness for the defense. I think we can say that.
Yeah, and to put that tidbit into perspective, right? We had the cell phone expert from FBI with that testimony that sort of drug on, wouldn't you say? That went on for, and so I would, and the courtroom rhythm was such where interest was, shall we say, waning a bit, particularly after this morning and afternoon.
Whenever you get into like deep forensics, it does wane.
Yeah, and I think his testimony was consistent, as I understand it, with the state's theory of things. But so end of the day, Friday, and this witness comes up and just calmly at the end drops this, I got cashed a check with money and brought it over to the law firm, as I understood it. Mm-hmm. And then there was Corey Fleming, Chris Wilson, and the police chief of Yemassee. And then we just sort of ended for the day. So here we are in the Murdaugh trial with another. What does this mean?
Yeah, now we got to worry about this all weekend.
One thing's two other notes in there from what he said, that missable details, I would call them. He goes, Alex suddenly stopped asking him to go cash those checks a few weeks before the murders.
That's right,
yeah.
The other one, and this was a real strong point for the state, Alec told him on a car trip, he was shuttling Alec to the airport for a vacation in the Florida Keys with Maggie's family after the murders around July 4th. And he told him, and Nathan Tootin testified how much Murdaugh said he looked forward to putting this boat crash stuff behind him and clearing Paul's name. Mm-hmm. And
yes.
It stuck with Nathan.
Yeah. And I was fascinated by his background, too. As he testified, he lifelong friends with Paul, lived in the area, right?
Mm-hmm. He lived with Paul on Moselle.
That's right. And then went to University of South Carolina and came back. And I guess while he was in college, he was working at the Murdaugh law firm. Mm-hmm. And now shows you what a small world it is. We're sitting here on the front porch of the Low Country, Walterboro, South Carolina, and he's a police officer here, correct?
Right.
Amazing. Yeah, it's really setting us up for, I know prosecution says they want to try and wrap up by the middle of next week. Mm-hmm. Do you think they could be on target for that?
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean that from the standpoint of each day isn't great, but one thing I do think I think those jurors are tired. Yeah. Now, just reading body language and, sometimes you read too much into that. Maybe they'll be refreshed by next week, but it's a lot, right? It's a big sacrifice.
And to try and remember everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got 6 notebooks full. Just today alone, I know that Tara had logged 17 pages of notes.
I believe it.
On the testimony. So for the jury to remember everything, those closing arguments are going to be everything.
Absolutely.
We are still waiting for Cousin Eddie to come. We're expecting it on Monday now. So we will see what happens.
To put that into perspective a little bit. We know pretty reliably what's still to come from the state. They're going to have somebody, because they've mentioned now several DNA swaps taken.
That's true.
They've they've talked about what appeared to be blood on a gun that Alex had at his truck.
Yeah.
There's potential blood on a T-shirt.
Right. Autopsy, right?
Autopsy, yeah. That's y'all.
Maybe it's not next week.
Yeah.
Be glad that you won't, and we certainly won't be able to see this from the gallery, but be glad that you won't be able to see that, because I'm think there's probably a strong likelihood they're going to show the autopsy photos in the courtroom. But then we also have, we know from the in-camera hearings last week, we're going to get a SLED forensic accountant to talk about where Alex's money was going, and that is going to directly set up Eddie Smith, I think, because that's going to be the second time officially in front of the jury we've heard that name.
Right.
Is when that guy comes, and we know he's coming.
And his lawyer was in the courtroom today, right?
Okay. Well, so much to look forward to for next week as we wrap up the third week of the Murdaugh double murder trial. We will hopefully you'll have an opportunity to catch up on all of the news this weekend that was, and we will be back with you on Monday. We do want to tell you that if you've enjoyed Unsolved South Carolina, the Murdaugh's Murder, Money, and Mystery, we're going to keep rolling through this trial, but you have another series to listen to, and we'd love to have you do that. It's called Unsolved South Carolina, Finding Brittany Drexel, and this is a project that we started in May and are now just rolling out new episodes. And it is a fascinating case. It's a young girl who went missing in Myrtle Beach, left and went down to Myrtle Beach for spring break with her friends and vanished on the streets. And for 13 years, we looked for her killer. Wow. And it is an unbelievable story. And we
look
hope
for that.
You can
look for the newest episode on that tomorrow.
Yeah, look for the latest episode on that tomorrow. And we'll see you here on Monday. Thanks so much.